Dear participants, welcome to the MOOC on Introduction to Public Policy. I am Sudhir, Faculty, Department of Public Administration, University of Rajasthan. Today, we are going to discuss a new innovative model in the public policy circle known as Punctuated Equilibrium Approach. Punctuated Equilibrium Approach is also known as Punctuated Equilibrium Theory, or in the short acronym PET. The major concept of this theory is to analyze and understand how change will take place from one policy to another policy. There will be a drastic shift from the previous to the current policies. Secondly, it is going to analyze about the decision making among the policy circles. This has been done by analyzing the federal government policies in United States of America. The learning objectives of this class is to understand the drastic policy shifts after equilibrium in American context, particularly the federal government. Secondly, to analyze the policy formulation in complex societies. Third, the compare and contrast between incrementalism and punctuated equilibrium approach. And finally, the student would be able to examine the different aspects of punctuated equilibrium approach. The following are the outlines of this course. First, introduction. Second, background. Third, conceptualization of punctuated equilibrium approach. Fourth, comparison of incrementalism and punctuated equilibrium approach. And finally, the application of this approach in the Indian context. Let me begin with the introduction. The punctuated equilibrium approach, the P stands for punctuate, means to interrupt something at intervals. Secondly, equilibrium is a state of balance. In natural sciences, this equilibrium is also known as stasis. Stasis is a period where there is no development as such. Punctuated equilibrium approach has got its origin by analyzing the federal government public policy models. Most of the scholars have taken a period of public policies done in federal government to analyze a situation, and they came through a theory such a way that most of the models were lying dormant for a period of time, and after the period of stasis they have deviated to a sudden shift or a drastic shift as such. Some scholars have argumented for the concept called as incrementalism. There was a dispute among many scholars that policies were done either with slight modifications, or you can say the gradual change through phases. Let me take the background how the punctuated equilibrium, the word punctuated equilibrium has originated. The origins of punctuated equilibrium approach, or you can say the word punctuated equilibrium, can be traced back to evolutionary biology, that is the study, a scientific study of the plants as well as animals. There was a dispute among paleontologists who have raised issues that there will be a large change as such and large change which is a rarity. The two differences, where some of them have proposed for a large change and some says that large change was a rarity. So at this juncture, paleontologists Stephen Jay Gould and Niels Eldredge have came up a innovative concept called as punctuated equilibria, which they coined this word punctuated equilibria, and they have sorted out the dispute of pro large changers and anti large changers. The seminal work known as Punctuated Equilibria, the Tempo and Mode of Evolution Reconsidered, was published in the year 1977. In this paper, they have argued that most of the species, once they achieve the status of fossil, they lie dormant, or you can say there will be hardly any change. Tempo means speed of any movement. Mode means a particular way of doing something. So they have reconsidered the concept of tempo and mode of evolution in fossils of species, and they came up with this theory called as punctuated equilibrium. Most of the dead animals and plants do achieve the status of a species. There might be a small genetic characteristic features, but these genetic characteristic features won't come under structural changes at large as such. That means the genetic features which they are going to transform has got very less effect on them. But the factors which are going to contribute for a sudden shift or a change on these fossils are the environmental as well as internal pressures as such. And these are going to interrupt the stasis period. For this purpose it is called as punctuation. So the background of punctuated equilibrium theory can be traced back to the biology, particularly paleontology, the study of the dead living animals and plants. This was adopted in social sciences. Punctuated equilibrium theory, when adopted to the social sciences, do have its influence in analyzing the social theories in complex societies, because public policy became more dynamic and it has created complex situations. In the social sciences, Brian Jones and Frank Baumgartner have adopted the concept of punctuated equilibrium from the biological sciences and applied it to the public policy models. They contributed a seminal book, Agendas and Instability in American Politics, in the year 1993, where they have argued about how the policy changes as such over a period of time, and this time will be dormant or stasis period, and from the stasis period there will be a drastic shift to the future policies. They began the study of US policy agenda in early 90s. The argument of the book deals with change, particularly the public policy circles. They began to study the US policy agenda. In fact, their areas covered were unemployment, poverty, capital punishment, where they have studied for a period of 4 decades and analyzed how change occurs in public policy models. There was some sort of a contentious issues among the policy cycle scholars that the dynamics of the policies were incremental and the policies were hardly incremental, that is pro-incrementalism and anti-incrementalism. At this juncture, they have adopted this biological concept and came with a new theory called as, in policy circles, known as the punctuated equilibrium approach. In fact, it is a fusion of the dynamics of species change as well as the dynamics of policy change as such. Punctuation, I have already explained it to you, that is known as interruption. Public policies over a period of time were lying unattended, or you can say stasis period, but suddenly they will be interrupted by a dramatic change. This dramatic change will be because of various factors. The factors which they have contributed which they contributed is the external as well as internal factors. Policy making, particularly in democratic nations, is a dynamic process. Lot many actors were involved, either influencing or in policy making. Lot many actors were involved either in policy making as well as influencing the public policies. Media, interest group, lobbyists, entrepreneur groups, along with public policy makers, do influence in the policy making. So they have analyzed this dynamic process, that alternatively a period of dormant or stasis and punctuation will appear in the public policy. So students, I would like to ask you one question. Why do you think that there is a period of stasis as such? There is a period of stasis as such. The stasis, or you can say a period of equilibrium, lies because too many policy actors will be involving in policy making. That is the first answer which they have given. The second one is, whatever the solution which appears to be suitable for a situation is not enough to have a change as such. And third, even if you reframe the public policy, of course reframing was a frequent process, but success is very rare. For this purpose, public policies remain stasis period over a period of time. Now you can look at the two photographs of the scholars who contributed the public punctuated equilibrium approach in social sciences. Frank Baumgartner is a distinguished professor of Richard J. Richardson in the University of North Carolina, and Brian Jones is a professor of J.J. Jake Pickle Regents Chair in Congressional Studies, University of Texas, Austin. Students, so far we have learnt about the introduction and background, how the punctuated equilibrium approach has emerged from evolutionary biology to social sciences, with the introduction of the authors who have adapted to the complex situation by analyzing the agenda setting in the federal government.